December 31st, 1999. There's a bunch of people buzzing. We're hours away from the new millennium, and everyone's wondering, okay, what are the technological advancements that are going to be made this next year? What kinds of things are going to change in our society? One of the things that we believe no one predicted was that a new millennium would also bring about a new way of mourning the loss of a loved one. Social media has done that. So this survey is going to take an in-depth look at how it affects our grieving process as a society. So as you can see, basically right now there are 30 million users since Facebook who have died. That's 30 million pages that are just floating around out there. How are people feeling about those pages? How are they interacting with those pages? Do they feel positively or negatively? That's what we wanted to find out from this survey. So social media, no longer is there a geographical barrier between grieving. You can basically interact with the dead person for as long as you want. There's a sense of immortality that has come as a result of social media. Next. Okay, so we created a survey. We disseminated it to as many people as we possibly could. So this survey was created in Qualtrics and posted on RIP social media accounts, specifically Facebook. And so we had 150 questions. It was a 20-minute survey, basically asking people to read mock posts with acceptable deaths, non-acceptable deaths, strong tie, weak tie. Acceptable deaths being things like car accidents or cancer, non-acceptable deaths being things like suicide or drug overdose. And then also combining that with, is this person a strong tie, weak tie? Strong tie being close family member, weak tie being maybe someone you went to grammar school with, maybe someone that you hardly know. So our expectations for this survey were ultimately that depending on the type of death and the type of relationship tie, individuals' opinions about those posts and about mourning would vary. Overall, we assumed that social media would be a positive association for people with mourning because it would allow them a platform to express their grief. So yeah, that's what we found. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the design and what that looks like for our survey.
Alright, so the structure of this survey was very specific and intentional, and it was created using the online software Qualtrics, as Alexis said earlier. And the first set of survey questions actually was asking introductory questions regarding the deceased, and as the survey continues, the questions get a little more specific, asking participants about their communication on social media through the mourning process, as well as their interactions with others. Ordering the questions in this way allowed the respondents to gradually build up to more intense questions, if you could say, asking specific questions about how they grieved. And as a result of the potential emotional response that we would get to more detailed questions, respondents were notified that they are free to exit the survey at any point if they're uncomfortable. And the last section just contained basic demographic questions and also were questions regarding how they use social media and kind of how often and what types of, like, are they using a computer, are they using a cell phone, those type of questions. Alright, so just to clear things up about what we're actually talking about, we decided to focus on one-way communication, which is information that is transferred in only one direction, from the sender to the receiver. And one-way communication is frequently the initial action that is taken by a mourner immediately following the death of a loved one. So we concentrated on these three constructs: controlling the narrative, which is the first, which refers to actions taken by the mourner to manage what information gets out and who it is going to regarding the deceased. Research suggests mourners go through the grieving process by telling stories, making meaning of the loss, expressing emotions to others, and sharing grief. They're controlling how the death is perceived on their own messages and with their own reactions. Permission for dialogue is actions taken by the mourner to begin the grieving process online by freely sharing their emotions. And mourners can be behind a computer screen, which can alleviate awkward face-to-face interactions. And this brought to our attention that mourners can use social media like as a shield from the pressure of real-life interactions, as I just said. And evade or acknowledge is actions taken by the mourner to interact with others to the extent that the mourners want via social networking sites. And social networking sites allow mourners to communicate with other social media users in a way that makes them feel comfortable and at their own comfort levels.
Okay, so our results we gathered from this survey, we used a software package used for conducting Statistical Analysis and Manipulating Data, called SPSS, we had a total of 24 respondents. Our hypothesis would be, we believed people would have a positive association with social media and social media mourning, and our results confirmed this. We performed reliability analysis and t-tests on permission, evade, and emotion, which was the same as controlling the narrative. We found that it had more to do with emotion. Overall, our data showed that when comparing our variables, there was no significant difference in the way people mourned those with strong versus weak ties. Whether relationships were strong or weak, we found that people were generally happy with the way they were allowed to mourn on social media. We believe this result occurred because those who have experienced loss feel that social media provides them with a safe outlet and a voice that they can control their grief. Some disadvantages we found were we received a low number.
Okay, so for evade, after we recoded everything, we were only left with 18 questions out of 150. And so for evade, we had for the mean or average. For weak ties, it was about 8.8, and for strong ties, it was about 9.8. And then permission, strong ties, 11.7, and then weak ties 12.1, and strong ties 9.5, and weak ties 9. So, I mean, bar graph kind of makes it look like there's a difference, but there's no significant difference between the data. It's just because we only have this much information from the amount of data that we received. Expected 500, got 24, that's okay. It's up to 84 right now.
Okay, so our low number of respondents definitely had an impact on our survey, as you can see. It made gathering quantitative data very, very difficult, but there's little control when you use a survey to counting on what the respondents will complete and who will not, because some of them would get halfway through the survey and be like, okay, this is getting too difficult, or it's taking too long, and so they'd quit. Whereas if you're in an in-depth interview, you have a little more, impact on making them stay there. But also, our questions did not respond or allow them the opportunity to ask further questions if they needed clarification. So for this research, qualitative data would have been more useful. The topic is one not easily comprehended by those taking the survey. Therefore, the questions may have been better understood if asked in a personal environment. We would have likely produced better information and more valuable information if we would have done in-depth interviews with this topic. So in conclusion, in both previous and present research, we have found that individual mourners made positive associations between social networking sites and their mourning process. We found that social media mourning is very beneficial to their mourning process. Our findings, we believe, are important because it shows that social media mourning in a common place has a lot of benefits. A lot of people found that it was very useful, and none of the reactions were negative, I would say. And then they also highlight the benefits of one-way communication, because we found that when people were talking about the way they mourned one way, they felt that they had a voice that they could control, which was a big part of the way they responded. But ultimately, time will tell how social media mourning affects the grieving process for individuals in the long run.